when we start to expand through this alignment, we begin to discover all these subconscious things that we are connected to. It is our consciousness. There is nothing we're separate from in this world. Even things we think are most wicked and evil, genocide, all this, terrorism, this, that, and the other. It's our consciousness. So when we're going within, we begin to expand ourselves and start noticing some of these, quote, messes. And what we're doing is either staying in lower levels of consciousness that don't recognize how to integrate, and instead they judge and separate and reconfirm the suffering or the illusion of separation. So we just amplify it.
There's a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here.
You are welcome here. You don't even know how joyful I am feeling right now. Multitasking, which is all part of, there you go, part of radio. I mean, if you do radio, you gotta multitask. That's just the way it is. Just want to take in this moment and just honor this space. And I thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good day to you wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, however life is showing up for you, and however you're showing up for life. Just welcome you to this space. Thank you for tuning in to yourself first, because that's important. Now, you can come in here without tuning into yourself, but I tell you, by the time you listen for about 5 minutes, you say, oh, wait a minute, I need to do something. Because either you're going to be triggered or you're going to say, damn, this is good stuff. Let me tune in. So you would have to tune in. If you get triggered, you better tune in. If you're feeling loved, you better tune in. Because when you do, you hear clearly. And then you don't have to blame yourself for not tuning in or all the other stuff. It's all good. And when you tune in, as I'm saying, you hear, you listen. You listen to that still small voice. You listen to the voice of the divine that is echoing through me, through my guest, and is an echo of what you know to be true. We all know the truth. Everything you need to know is within you right now. When you hear it and sit with it and be with it and just say yes to it, you will be transformed. I am Ade, your transformational agent, your beingness artist. Thank you for being here. This is Being You, the podcast. And it is so good to see you. So good to see you, Marianne. Nice to see you. Great dawning indeed. Season 2, episode 4. I am so grateful. I am in gratitude for the unfolding and what's just happening, period, in my life, my friends, my family, and what's going on in your life, because I know it is good, right? It may not feel good sometimes. It may feel challenging. It may feel difficult. And when it's challenging, when it doesn't feel good, I'm not going to tell you to be joyful about it. You can be joyful if you can access that. But more importantly, recognize that it's just but a moment, that this too shall pass. And you will pass. You will get the grade you need. And the situation, the experience, the event, the circumstance will pass. Being you to journey back to yourself. Let me make sure everything is happening over here, because I see the internet trying to act all goofy, but ain't nobody got time for that, because we know this too shall pass, right? Just a little test to see if I was paying attention. I'm not gonna trip, because either we're gonna do a show or not. And if we don't, then so be it. Anywho, yes, being you, it's all about how you see yourself in the world, how you see the world, how you see yourself in the world, and how you see the world in you. If there ever was a time to ask ourselves deeper questions, this is it. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Today's conversation is a conversation with my brother, my friend, my soulmate. That's right. He is my soulmate. And for those of you who are sort of like stuck in what? Yeah, well, whatever. Whatever you think is whatever you think. But we got to understand that soulmates are not limited. We're part of an infinite power and presence. And you think there's only one person and that soulmate, you have to marry them? Sometimes you end up, well, maybe not even married. Sometimes you get in a relationship with your so-called soulmate and you're like, flip that. Okay, I was going to say something else. Flip that. I don't want shit to do with the soulmate business because you thought that's what you're supposed to do. I'm ready to take it to the next level. Oh, no, you're not. If you don't tune in, you end up taking it to the next level. And instead of getting flipped, you get flipped up. You know what I mean? I just don't want to start with that too soon. I'm kind of building myself up. I have a guest here today. He's going to be joining us, but I'm going to bring John out. Yeah, I'm going to bring him out. I'm going to bring out my soulmate. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my soulmate.
What's up, brother? What's up, man?
Okay.
Good to see you this wonderful day. Soulmates out.
Oh my God.
Hey, thanks for the crown.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm just bringing you. Oh, for the. Oh yeah. You know, if you're my soulmate, you got to be part of royalty. You know,
there it is.
Yeah. But I don't know why it's on your head and not. Oh, it's not on mine because I am it.
That's
See?
right.
So
That's
people
right.
who come in and forget, then here you go. Because those of you don't know, Ade means crown, and that's my logo. And if you look at it, so the crown is my name. Then there's an infinity sign in it. John, I was like, what is he doing? You have this straight face to him, like, what's going on over there? Oh, this is going to be good.
It's going to be good, definitely.
So there's the infinity sign in there, which is the crown, my Ori, my consciousness is connected to the infinite. And you can see the heart if you look, because that is my connection. Everything I do is rooted in love. And so all in there.
It's beautiful.
The crown of love.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
wanted to bring you on before I tell people about you. I know you're a world famous brother. And, you know, when I start reading your bio, I'm like, why is he reading the bio? We know that about him already. We know what he's up to.
That's old news.
That's old news. He said he's spiritual, but he's still behind. He's reading bio. We can because even if there's many years from now, they look at you and they can read your bio. Like, we see who he is. People back then were so backwards that we had to read a text to tell you about somebody. I could just look in his eyes and see he's been a musician. He inspires. But anyway, we're still here and I'm embracing here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my brother, my friend, who I'm so excited to bring to you. I mean, I've been just looking forward to this conversation because we haven't had an radio interview in a long time. So we have some time to talk and share together, and feel free to join us. If not, that's okay. John and I are going to have fun.
That's right, man. That's right.
Oh, boy. Now, for those of you who don't know my opening song, You Are Welcome Here, you probably heard me say, thank you, John. I wrote that song and you made it your own. I'm just BSing. You know, that was John's song. He wrote it. He downloaded it. And the funny thing about this song is when I first heard it, it was like, it's all right. There were some other ones that I liked on your Limitless Light and Love. Limitless Love and Light. No, Limitless.
You had it right, Limitless Love and Light. Yep.
Yeah, no, I knew it. But this has just touched me on such a deep level, and It just seems to creep up into my shows. I'm like, okay, come on, you're welcome here. Come on. Nice. But I want to tell you about John. He's a life teacher. He's a speaker. He's a Billboard-charting singer-songwriter. He's a healer and an author with a passion for music, community expansion, and limitless love and light. He currently serves as the founder of Polarized Records, co-founder of Master Moment Makers. It's so hard reading something when reading somebody's bio when you know them well. So it's the co-founder of MasterMomentMakers.com, an intuitive training membership site, partner at Healing Arts Management and Conscious Songwriting Retreat.com, and a true collaboration leader at bandingpeopletogether.com. Clients include leaders at Netflix, Focus Brands, Home Depot, Cisco, Microsoft, NASA, ESPN, SunTrust, and many, many more. And there's so much more I can say about John, but I promise you, you're going to feel it. You're going to know it. You're going to go to his website, because I'm going to give you his website address so you can just scan while you listen, okay? Because you can multitask. Or if you can't multitask, just wait till later. His website address is John Stringer Inc. John Stringer, INE.com. I'm going to give you...
INC. Yep.
Oh, what? Oh, I say ING. Okay. Yeah. Okay. John Stringering, INC.com. Oh, now I'm going to give you his social media handles, because once John and I start talking, chances are I'm going to forget it. I just feel like I just won't even remember. So let me give it to you now. Get your pen and paper, students. He's on Facebook, facebook.com, John Stringer 1111. That's the number. Don't write it out. John Stringer, that's his name, 1111. YouTube, youtube.com/user/John H. Stringer. And Instagram, his handle is john.h.stringer. The difference between Stringer and Stronger is an I, right? But I think John is so strong, but he don't want us to know. So I just put an I in there, because I am strong. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, psychics and skeptics, physical beings and non-physical beings, help me welcome my brother, my friend, my soulmate, he's one of those brothers that I go to, and sometimes I'm just like, I need to hear your feedback on this. Or sometimes we're talking about something random, and there might be something in my mind that just kind of lingering. I'm like, what do you think about this? Check in about that. And he has a way of just downloading spiritual truth. And for me, John, you mean so much, because I know a lot of other spiritual brothers. I'm doing air quotes because, spiritual brothers, but there's something about you, and I'm not comparing you to others, that I just love, that's authentic, that is just one of a kind. We all are. But I am just grateful for our unique relationship. And I'm grateful for the day you came over to me at Hillside, and you said, hey, man, what's going on? Because I've seen you and your wife, Kathy. And I was like, I'm usually don't know how to break the ice. Until once the ice break, I'm all up in there. Take over. So I'm glad you did. So help me welcome my brother, man. John Stringer.
I'm so glad we did. And when you invited me, I think we talked about it recently. I was so grateful just to get to spend time with you, man. Because, we used to have those one-on-one hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long conversations together, just chopping it up, enjoying each, that's love, man. So I love you, my brother. We definitely soulmates. Me and Kathy were just talking about how many soulmates we have in our lives. That very same topic, man. You're definitely one of our soulmates, family. We know we designed this journey together. Okay. So I'm so grateful to be with you today, man.
That's right, man. That's right. You're welcome. You are welcome. So where do we want to start? So many places.
I know,
right? So many places.
Yes, indeed.
I'm gonna lay a foundation, because with this new phase, actually, let me just look at people in the chat room for a minute and just acknowledge them, because like I said, once you and I, New Jace is in the house from New Jersey. That's right.
Jay-Z, baby.
Marianne is in the house. Christine Overrocker. I had to say her whole name.
ATL, Christine, what's up?
That's right. ATL. She said, love your laugh and smile. They don't make me laugh, because when people say your laugh, I'm just like, it's like I get hypnotized by people saying something about my laugh. It's like, stop. And I get all like, stop it. I'm like, huh? What's going on now? Corley's in the house. Grand afternoon, my sister. Kathy's in the house. Of course,
Kathy.
There's no better place. Kathy won't be anywhere else but here. Oh, and on Twitter too. I don't know if I mentioned John's handle on Twitter. It's John Stringer, right? On Twitter.
Yep, that's
got it. That's right, Marianne. Sometimes you gotta multitask. And Tina said we have soul groups, soul families. Mm-hmm. It's not about Hallmark. I know that's right. Who else is in there that I actually acknowledge? Limitless, love, and light. Thank you, Tina, for posting that website address. And Russell, how are you doing from San Diego, Inner Light Ministries? And he said, thanks for inviting me to join. 10,000 hugs. Oh, goodness. Talk about limitless love. All right, my brother, let's jump in.
Let's do it, baby.
Let's invite people into our conversation.
Indeed.
So what I was going to say earlier is the new phase of my podcasts, this second season, is really going deeper. Well, initially started with me just doing it, hosting it myself. And then when I invite guests, I would do this process where we talk about names. So everyone that comes, I'm going to ask them the names. And why? Okay. Because I believe our names carry such a significance in who we are. It influences how we see the world. It is our soul signature. It means a lot. Some of us like our name, some don't. Some of us like our name, but we'll allow people to pronounce it differently because we're in a different country. And when they try and pronounce it the right way, you said, no, don't pronounce it the right way because I don't like the way it sounds. Pronounce it this way. But anyway, so are we going to tackle both your names? Because what I want to ask you is, what does your name mean to you? What is your names? If you want to do the middle name, I'll let you decide if you want to say it or not. I know it already, but so let's talk about your names.
You love it, man. So my full name is John Hamilton Stringer IV, and John being some sort of derivative of Yochanan in the Hebrew, etc., means God is gracious. I've heard other translations as well, but for me, I was named after my father, who was named after his father, who was named after his father, right? And then I passed that name on to my son, so he's the fifth. So for me, growing up, the real meaning was really this identification or label that connected me to my physical dad. And not growing up with him, since he wasn't in the picture, it was a valuable name. It was like I was his namesake. Since he wasn't there, it was the thing I held on.
He gave you his name. It's like, son, what's that thing in Lion King? Wait a second, I'm not going to lift you. Well, I'm going to lift you up and then I'm gone. But here's your name.
Exactly. So I cherished it because I felt like growing up.
So sorry to interrupt, but do you like that crown? Because you seem to be leaning into the crown. Any particular reason?
It's perfect placement, baby. I love it.
Okay. Hey, I want to have you come to the center, but you're like,
see, check it out. My microphone is right. Oh, you can't even see it right here.
Yeah.
So I'm actually leaning into the mic. That's the irony of it.
But we can hear you though.
You can hear me fine.
If you want to stay under the crown.
I'm like rolling and leaning at the same time. Right?
So you cherished your name.
Yeah, cherished the name and just was grateful for it because of that. As far as any other meaning, I haven't looked deeply into it, but I know for me, I felt grateful and resonated with the name most of my life. Knew I was going to name my son that when I had a son. It was a foregone conclusion for me, right?
It was a no-brainer.
Yeah, thankfully Kathy was game. She was down with it. But I'd say 5 years ago, I actually received my spiritual name because I asked, what's my spiritual name? Or I actually was in a ceremony where I was asking for a word, and then I heard the name, and I'm like, is that my spiritual name? Turns out it's Yochanan, which is the Hebrew version of that, which is God is gracious as well. So, I feel like grace is has been such a big lesson in my life and in my family's life, and one of the lessons I came to learn. So I feel like I'm very appropriately named, So I'm very grateful for that name. But it's obviously so you can transcend that too.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. Go ahead, because
I'm glad not to be limited to that name by any means.
Yeah, and we're integrated, the spiritual and the human, right?
That's right.
I was it's coming. Wait for it. Wait for it. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm no longer my name. So here's what I did. This is what I did while I was listening to you. You said, haven't looked into it much. I just did a quick Google search for Hamilton, your middle name.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because when you said it, and I've always thought that name Hamilton has such a kingly name, royal name. Because I was actually going to say something about that when we were talking about the crown. So here's what I discovered. Well, just right now, it said a Scottish name, a surname of one of the great noble families of Scotland, and used as a given name since the 19th century. Also a place name from the village of Hamilton or Hameldon, whatever that is. But what I love about it is this whole thing where I feel like that name just has such a noble, a royal meaning, energy to it as I look at it. And I'm still looking at it because I saw some more stuff. And the thing about John, in the metaphysical community, New Thought community, there's this thing about John representing the disciple of love.
Right.
And your work is all about that.
Totally. Yeah.
And the beauty of it is what you said. And I know that your John Hamilton is your grandfather's name and it goes back.
Yeah. But
it just kind of hit me. It's like, it's also a connection, your connection to your ancestors. Yeah. Like, it's like, it's almost like a marker to remind you of your connection to those you never met in the physical body, but you're always connected to.
That's right.
So it's your dad's name, your grandfather's name. So I was just going to say your dad's name, your grandfather's name. Was it your great-grandfather's name as well?
My great-grandfather's name. I was just going to talk about him. Okay, so my great-grandfather was actually a doctor in Mississippi. And they had this, interesting enough, this viral outbreak or some sort of disease outbreak in Mississippi. And they sequestered everyone or quarantined everyone to Mud Island. If you look up Mud Island and its history, you can find out about this. But my grandfather, Dr. John Hamilton Stringer, was actually one of the only doctors to volunteer to go to that island. And they ended up putting a plaque there for his service to those people who were sick. So it was a very, very interesting story. Now, my father shared that story with me actually a couple of years ago. So I didn't know this until, in my 40s. But I thought that was a fascinating story that he was really really took his role as a servant to others seriously and took on tasks that others might not take on. So I love that about and honor that about, that ancestry and that dedication. And I've always found it interesting that in times of struggle, when someone's having a physical crisis, like give you an example, this is fascinating. We see this in our lives play out, but often the patterns of our ancestors are in our DNA. Like I've seen things in my life similar play out, like my father's life and different things. Well, my grandfather or great grandfather, being a doctor, I didn't really know much about that. Like I said, until my 40s. When I was in high school, there was a wreck. I was working late one night at TCBY. It was the frozen yogurt place, right, in Tennessee. So, I had a job when I was a senior, working late one night, just about to close. All of a sudden, this drunk driver crosses the parking lot and goes all the way to the next parking lot and slams into the building. Big brick, like Kroger or grocery store style building. Just slams into it, smashes his car completely. I'm the first one out the door, running to go help, running to the car. This other lady's behind me. She calls the police. I get to the car, see the dude, his neck is hanging. Literally, it cut the flap of his chin to his neck, just hanging down.
Yikes.
And it didn't, I wasn't squeamish. I wasn't, literally felt like a doctor, bro. I'm like, so I kind of like moved his head down so it wouldn't be open and just pouring out. I didn't touch it, but I could smell alcohol coming out. And I'm just like, all right, stay with him until I'm saying, you're going to be all right, brother. You're obviously I didn't know if he was going to be all right, but
so you were lying, but you were trying to keep him alive.
Yeah. But as a teenager, that was a good example of how I've noticed in myself in moments of crisis, physical crisis, something just comes on into me like I know what to do. It's weird. I don't even understand it. I think I even asked the lady to call the police or something or call an ambulance. I don't know. Long story short, I've seen that in my life time and time again. People choking at a restaurant and I just have this impulse to go help. Like I know what to do. Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? But that instinct, last story about that. We were at a party with my celebrating my youngest sister's birthday, and everybody's having a great time. And I'm very present, just being, aligning the whole time and listening, being very in the moment, and something just grabbing my attention to watch our little niece. And she's walking around the pool. And I keep thinking, okay, I'll just keep your eye on her. And I'm watching everybody else interact, and I keep watching. All of a sudden later, she falls in the pool. No safety thing. Bro, it took all of a millisecond, it felt like, for that impulse to kick in. I just dove straight in and got her, grabbed her, she, pulled her out. Long story short, there was no hesitation. It's like this automatic thing that kicks in when I'm present. And I've noticed it even when I didn't know how to align, even when I didn't know how to be present, that same thing would kick in times of urgency and emergency. I can ask, that's part of the encoding in the DNA from ancestry. Like, that impulse where it's like, how do some of us naturally just know certain things? We bring this through. For those of us who are willing to accept the idea of many lives, we bring it through there, but we also bring it through our ancestry and bring, so that coding, we can access all of that. Like none of that's separate from us, which I find so fascinating. So anyway, I just wanted to share that since you asked to honor the ancestors, we all have that capacity to tap into their experiences, their knowledge, because there's no separation. They are us. They are, but it's also coded in our DNA, like layers. That's right. There's fascinating interviews about this, like how the stuff that lies dormant in our DNA are from layers of humanity and in our ancestry, whereas what's active is what we're bringing through now. What's the same thing in consciousness? What we're bringing through now is this individuated point of awareness that we identify with us as us in personality. But we actually have access to so much more. So anyway, I'll stop at that.
Well, it's funny because I want to do several things. There's so much in my head. There's fireworks of inspiration.
That's how we do, baby.
You've answered some of the questions I was going to ask next. You've talked about things that I've been feeling. You were talking about this impulse to just jump and help people. And I've definitely seen that in you. I mean, you just like, you're gone. I mean, you hear a loud noise outside the house. You don't even ask anybody what was that noise. You ain't got a t-shirt on, you out there. Where'd he go? He went to help.
You know what? Just this is one of those funny jokes we like just between you and I we talk, but everybody's invited. Be that one brother that get up and walk toward the noise.
You're like, there you go. There you go.
Like, what is he doing?
Like, if he ran out like that, something is happening. And then everybody will catch up a few seconds later. But the thing is, like, oh, that's why he ran out the house. So, because I was in a joking way, but seriously, ask you, how do you see yourself showing up as a doctor during this time, this pandemic? When you talked about your great grandfather, it's like, okay, well, so he's in you, but you kind of spoke to that, and your work, is about healing. You're a healer, as you said. Those who came before us, they're in our DNA.
Yeah, we
can avoid it. It is what it is. And I often tell people, because sometimes some people have a not so good memory about their memory history, about their ancestry. We have the power to heal that. Yes, we have the power to correct that.
Yes.
And so I'm going to move, because time is doing what time does. It keeps moving. Let's go to little Johnny. Well, let's just say Johnny, because when you were younger, they called you Johnny. Not your son, you.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the work you're doing now is you're healing through songs, through getting guidance as an author. You're doing a lot of different things. You get bored if you're doing less than 10 things. You have to have so many things to it. You'll be like, I'm bored. And Kathy's like, don't you still have that project to hand? Yeah, I have that, but I'm bored. That's funny. So tell us about what it was like growing up. And the question, really, I can kind of ask it like this. How did you see the world then, when you were younger, to how you see it now? Is it different? Is it the same? Or some have changed over the years?
That's a great question, bro. Great question. So off the cuff, the first thing that comes up is, I think back then as a child, I was probably, I can remember early memories of being observant, and then being taught certain things. Like one of the memories of, wow, people could harm you. I remember that very strongly in early memory. When someone got me to put my finger in battery acid as a kid and lick it. And then,
goodness.
Yeah, my sister told on me. My mom went off. She's like, that could have harmed you, etc. I didn't get sick, thank goodness.
Well, so he had you put I don't know if it's a he, but the person had the
girls in our neighborhood.
Hands in it, first of all, as if that's not bad enough. Then they say, lick it. Oh, they're trying to lick you out.
I was very, very young. I don't even know if I was 3, 4 or what, but I'm saying, I don't know anything. I don't know what this thing is. And it tasted like some sort of lemony acid like stuff, right? So that's all I knew. So I'm licking it. They're laughing about it. And then my sister stops it and my mom goes off. But in that moment, it was one of the earliest memories of being taught that people could do something that could lead to harm. And that was a new concept to me. Like, what? They were actually doing something intentionally that could have harmed me. This is weird.
Why?
What a concept, right? But most of life was, as a child, I think the way I saw life was observing, learning, and then I remember becoming more and more convinced by the ideas that I had, and then begin to create a lot of suffering for myself. I remember a lot of that. I remember a lot of beauty too, a lot of love from my mom. Just her, watching her serve us, watching her work hard, watching her practice her faith and teach us her faith, had a lot of great, valuable lessons, and then challenges as well. Back then, I saw those challenges and I created a lot of suffering because I wasn't finding the things that helped me learn the lessons from the challenges. Instead, I was accepting a lot of victimization consciousness and stuff like that. Everything from racism to being in a single family home, to once I was a teenager, finding out why my family unit wasn't like other family units, but also that yearning for my father, like all of those things. So a lot of that was I felt victimized by my circumstances, and I felt powerless to change them for a lot of my life, because I would pray for my dad to come back. I would pray. So that was the suffering I created. But there was a lot of curiosity and a strong desire that kept growing to figure it out. Like, what am I missing? Why can't I get this quote right? That was my misperception. Now contrast that to now I'm able to, thankfully, because of the lessons, I'm able to see the beauty in every single one of those things I used to think were things that were making me a victim, or that I created to be a victim, right? So each of those things, like not having the father in the household, gave me such a strong desire to connect with what I was learning as God the Father. And that intense desire brought me to the place where now I have a direct connection, a knowing, and I can download those teachings, and I listen to that spirit, listen and access that higher level of consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that knows there is oneness. And I experience that oneness. I experience all those things I was learning about as a child. So I'm grateful. That's, to me, the grace, right?
Yes.
But I'm also grateful for my mom's cautionary, loving way she would express. Back then, I used to look at it, and even as an adult, for some time, I used to look at it like, wow, why is she so cautionary and this, that, and the other? But now I honor and understand where she's coming from, and understand the way she expresses love. And she's just been such a consistent, beautiful example of love in her own way. And consistently practicing her faith, her best her way. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that about her. I mean, man, I was growing up, she was forcing us to read the Bible in the morning, have devotions on every day, all kinds of stuff, right? I hated that stuff. Now that's my life, man. Right. I practice meditation every morning. I'm listening to Spirit every morning. I'm communing with the divine. That's my life. And she laid that foundation. I'm so grateful. Never would have thought I'd be living that way, even though there's some, things that expressions of it that look different. But the reality is, we might not be saying the same thing, explaining things the same way.
You may be saying the same thing, but just explaining it differently.
Exactly. It's the same love, the same power. Exactly. So I'm grateful for that. And I think I'm also just grateful for, like, the emotions that I went through. Now I can see they really primed me to be able to relate to the depths of trauma and suffering that people create. I mean, I've gotten to be homeless. I've gotten to be on all ends of abuses and all kinds of stuff. I've experienced a lot of things, and I see the perfection now. I finally see the perfection of the design. Made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I see the perfection of it. And I feel like it's grace. I feel like it was that desire to break free from the suffering that brings us into finally listening, finally taking the time to choose and decide to listen. So the difference now is I'm not looking at an external thing needing to change. I'm not looking at some external resource to bring me what I need, or my dad coming home, or this, that, and the other. I found what I desire through that connection, through that alignment. And that's, that found the peace, got to experience the peace that they say passes all understanding. Like all these phrases is like, now I know what it is. I'm like, okay, this is beautiful. So I'm grateful.
So true. So true. And, I love because part of this conversation of being yourself, it's something that came to me this morning while I was preparing, or being you, should I say, but it is being yourself. I have to scroll up it came up for me. It's like being you is a process of releasing, embracing, learning, unlearning, knowing, not knowing, pain, struggle, triumph, success, creating and recreating. And it's ongoing, right? It's ongoing. Sometimes we get trapped in this illusion that we think there's a certain place we're trying to get to. And when we get there, we're like, yes, we made it. We won the gold medal and we're going to stay here for the rest of our lives. But every moment is an opportunity. It's really, every day is like an Olympic, right? And it's not determined by if you get the gold, the bronze, or don't even qualify. It's just, how well did you do today for you? How would you rate your actions?
Totally, man. The quality of our experience is what I'm learning we have complete control over. Not the external experience itself, but the quality of the internal experience right now is determined by the quality of the thoughts we choose, the frequencies we choose in this now moment. We always have control over our choices. And whether or not we realize what we're choosing is often what we're discovering. Like, oh crap, I'm feeling this way right now. What is this coming from? Let me expand my awareness into this higher level of consciousness that can actually diagnose that can bring the knowing in and help me see what that is, right? So that, to me, that process helps with this cyclical journey, like you were talking about. You know how you said, you know, the triumphs, the challenges, the lessons, like all of that. The very cyclical process of change, but it's a beautiful cycle and it's a perfect cycle. The challenge is many of us are experiencing that cycle and experiencing suffering, like when I was through most of my life, actually. And even now, sometimes I still choose suffer. No, check that out. I'm going to stop myself. That's a pattern right there. And that's a perfect example. What I was just about to say, even now, I still choose. That right there is the very pattern in myself in this now moment that's holding on to an old story. And that's what we often find ourselves doing. Like, even now, I still choose blah, blah, blah. Even now, I still go through blah, blah, blah. And we're just reinforcing the same thing. However, my awareness helped me see that pattern in myself. And now I'm choosing to change it and say, no, that is not continuing for me. Instead, I'm aligning so the quality of my experience is presence, regardless of what's going on. And I'm choosing the knowing so that I can be fulfilled and experience the bliss and know that this cycle is for me instead of creating the suffering. So I no longer claim that in this now, I get to choose. In this now, it doesn't matter what I was last week, an hour ago. In this now, I always have the sovereign power to choose how I show up. And so I choose to show up aligned now. That's the new me. It's always been me. I'm just waking up to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. And, you know, because there are different, of course, and many things is popping up for me and where I want to go. And just as you caught yourself there, there is something to be said about a conscious awareness.
Yes.
Because most of us does not grow up being told about our spiritual powers, our ability to create, to recreate, to choose a different thought, to choose a different experience. Our parents taught us what they know.
Yeah.
Just as you're teaching young Johnny, now he wants to be called, he said, don't call me Johnny, so let me switch. John, Lil John, the fifth, number 5. You know, you were teaching him based on what you're aware of, you're based on your understanding of who and what God is, you and your wife. And I love your relationship with it. And hopefully we have time to talk about that, because it's just some things sometimes when you share it, sometimes because of how I grew up and the fact that I grew up in Nigeria as well. And it's such a different thing that sometimes I'm like, you did well with your son? Why? You know, but help me remember that. Because I wanted you to say more about that. But the thing is, so this choosing, sometimes we're not aware. We don't know of our power to choose. We don't know of our power to create. And also it's hard to even understand the power to choose and the power to create when we are looking at what we're taught in this physical realm and how life is based on the five senses. It's like, why would I choose that? But sometimes, not sometimes, in order to answer that question, intellect cannot give you that. You know, like it's in the Bible where somebody asked Jesus, "Who are you?" I can't remember one of the disciples. "Who are you?" And he said, "No, the more important thing is, who do you say I am?" And he said, the disciple replied and said, "You're the son of God or child of God or whatever." And he said, "Yeah, flesh and blood did not give you that." It's like, it wasn't, you came up with that answer not based on your physical experience or your five senses experience. You tapped into spirit to really see me for who I am. And that's the beauty of the moments when maybe father wasn't there, mom wasn't there for whatever the reason, or being told to put finger in acid and put in your mouth. And thankfully, I mean, and even if it did get burned and you now have a little stump, I mean, that would still give you an experience. Like, okay, you learn that sometimes people do stupid shit. So you have to tune in, before you do it, even if you're 2 or 3, like, oh, nope, people do stupid shit. Let me see. Let me check in on that. I might be the reminder you need. But, and God, the universe, the divine never wastes anything.
That's right, so, man.
I want to circle back.
You know what? I'm laughing so hard.
I know. Go ahead.
You're on point, man. That's so true.
Yeah.
Me and Kat were just remembering together that same lesson that everything is used for us. Everything. Every mistake, every quote trauma we have created, all of it, even our resistance and our suffering. I'll just say this one thing, because the suffering itself is so perfect, and many of us have been conditioned to believe it is somehow something to resist, which creates more suffering. Makes no sense, right? So many of us can hear and tune in and have heard from others who tune in the same message that there's only oneness and that all is well and always is. Just taking that, what about suffering? Well, either all is well and always is, or it's not. So when you choose suffering, is all well? Yes, all is well and always is. So then, taking a different look at suffering, what is suffering? Suffering is an illusion that we create, the quality of our experience that we create and we choose. Victimization, lack, separation, fear, etc. All these different words we talk about, but it's really being out of alignment with the source and the essence of who we are, the knowing, that oneness. So when we resist whatever arises, judging it as somehow bad or what have you, judging it as not well, judging it as not part of our oneness, then we create that suffering in all sorts of ways, attachment, resentment, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. But the point is, what is the suffering? It is the very quality of our experience that tells us what it feels like to limit ourselves to not one, to limit ourselves to separation. In other words, that oneness is the wellness. That oneness is that eternal, unchanging perfection in divinity, sacredness. When we separate ourselves and create as a man or woman thinketh, or he, she, or other thinketh, and so shall it be, right? When we create that quality of our experience and create the illusion of separation, suffering, etc., it creates a stronger desire, increases our desire through finding out what it feels like to limit ourselves, increases our desire to awaken. Yes,
exactly.
So that cycle of suffering is in and of itself perfect, because it tells us, what does it feel like to deny our divinity? What does it feel like to deny that our good is already here? What does it feel like to deny that all is well and always is? What does it feel like to put energy and belief, invest our belief power into we can be harmed, we are subject to harm, we can somehow die, get sick, etc., and that is real? What does it feel like to invest in that? That suffering increases our desire to awaken from the nightmare we have created. The quality of our experience can either be a nightmare or heaven, hell or heaven, right? Mm-hmm. So our opportunity as we experience that suffering over and over is just like my favorite example, banging our head against the wall over and over. Eventually you pass out, the pain gets so intense that you can't do it anymore. And you finally want to stop, or something eventually happens one way or the other. There's going to come a point where you awaken. Now, some of us go back to the suffering over and over again, but that desire is continually increasing to awaken. And when that desire is strong enough, we finally look for the practices that work for us. That's why I'm grateful for the suffering I created as a child, because it increased my desire to connect. And I was able to break through and finally hear that oneness and get to share it with other people. And that's the grace to me. That's the beauty of the perfection of our lives. It's just like this wonderful design that is totally for us, regardless of what it looks like, whether it's a plandemic or a pandemic. You know what I'm saying?
I know that's right. Whether it's planned, intentional, or out of the blue.
It's all for us, man.
And we can transcend it. It's funny because I want to ask you, well, of course, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know why I'm telling myself that I'm going to ask you a question. That's what I do. So anyway, but when you were talking about suffering, right?
Yep.
And how sometimes I'm hearing an echo or something. I don't know where's that coming from. But where we kind of find ourselves in that suffering, it made me think of a video you and I watched, and it kind of went viral, where this woman was talking to her partner, boyfriend, husband, and she had a nail in the head. And you remember that? You don't remember the video, YouTube video? And she had a nail in the head, and she was like, I don't know what it is. I just got this constant headache. And he's looking, and when he tries to say something, he says, "No, let me finish. Just let me finish." He's trying to point out, you have a nail in the head. Like, but and she was just going on about, I just can't take it. And then when he tries to tell her, maybe if you take out, and she said, "See, you don't listen." And all he was trying to do was take out the nail. And we live life like that sometimes. Maybe if you just take that nail out of your head, it might ease the pressure. Now, even that will be used, because life never wastes anything. Now, I want to sort of go back a bit here, and I want you to I won't put you on the crown, because the crown is John. What would Kathy say now? Kathy would probably say this is John 4.0. See, I remember when you were John 2.0, 2.3. I think you're 4.0 now. So I'm going to take that crown off you, and I want to take you down memory lane. So imagine we're walking side by side. I was going to say hand in hand, but that's not going to work in the Western world. They'll be like, what is going on? Especially in Georgia, right?
Brother. You know I love you, man.
Okay, hold my hand, man. Hold my hand. So we're walking back into your life. And let's say maybe in your teens, your early 20s. Tell us about your experience as a man in America, a Black man in America, and now a Black man on a spiritual path.
Right.
Because America, and why that's important is, and some of the things that happened then is still happening, of course, the injustice, inequality, oppression. And sometimes I feel like some people are struggling with that. Right. And you are the place now where you see life differently. And you're honoring the oneness and accepting and recognizing that, yes, we're going to go through pain. Sometimes you're going to struggle. Sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be difficult. But something else has your back. What was it like for you as in your early 20s, as a Black man in America, knowing that how Black men are treated, how Black people are treated, and how did you navigate that?
So my awareness of our history.
Yeah. And like I said, you can't wear your spiritual hat.
Right. Okay. You got it. Well, it's hard not to.
Well, I understand. But
I know what you mean. So my awareness of the history of America, Black and white relations and all of that stuff, as well as Native American, etc., really didn't begin to expand until I was in 7th grade. So most of my life, I grew up not even knowing about our history in this country, in the United States, and how prejudice and racism was a factor in relations. I sensed it in it was eighth grade that I first learned.
So seventh grade, that would be, you'd be 13 then, right? 12, 13?
That's probably about right. Okay. Seventh grade, I'd been in a private Christian school most of my life, predominantly white. There was like me and another African American in my class, and one Cambodian guy, my best friend. I remember learning in seventh grade that there was an issue for the first time when I liked this other girl who was, where was she from? She grew up in Puerto Rico, but she was born in the U.S., grew up in Puerto Rico, and her family was missionaries. And I really liked her. And my buddy Putsincombe comes and tells me one day, hey, man, so-and-so and so-and-so, the other guys who I believe were my friends, been saying stuff like, that's not right. And I was like, huh? He's like, because you're black and she's white, that's not right. You like her? I'm like, what? I was shocked, right? I'm like, these are my friends. And what?
Where did you read that from?
I'm at a private Christian school. Where is this coming from?
Aren't we known by our love? And I love her.
That was a kind of a chink. And I'd seen other things, but not really thought about racism that much. I felt like I was very fortunate because my mom was didn't have a lot of that programming. She was very accepting of any and everybody and compassionate and loving and very inclusive. So I was raised that way. So to see it when it's projected towards you, I was kind of like, oh, that's weird. But I wasn't conditioned to see myself as separate. Now I knew there was some socioeconomic differences because a lot of my friends, seemed to be doing very well. Their parents were doctors and this, that, and the other. And we were doing pretty good. We had a 3-story house growing up. So it wasn't like I was dirt poor, but I could see a difference with some of the things they were doing, And so it wasn't until 8th grade when I left that school and went to all black public school. There was maybe one white kid in my class, right? So it totally flipped right in the projects. And for those who aren't familiar with what the projects are, they are the lowest socioeconomic housing factor that the government set up in the U.S. We won't get into the reasons, but
that's a whole different conversation, right?
Yeah.
Speaking about being black in America, go ahead.
Right. But going there was such an eye opener, bruh. Everything from drugs to stabbings to literally murders. The girl I started dating, that 8th grade year, her boyfriend was a wrestling star who had been stabbed and killed the year before I got there, right? So it was an eye opener to see this. But it taught me. I was in the African American community and began to see things in probably the pressure cook in this little pressure cooker area. And I began to learn about civil rights while I was there. Oh man, you talk about eye-opening. That was the thing that changed my life, actually, because I'd gotten depends on who you ask. My mom says she chose to take me out of the school. I remember being kicked out of the school, but regardless, I left the private school and went to this school and saw such a stark difference. But learning all of these things made me realize and value our ancestors and value the plight of the African American in the U.S. and how Martin Luther King, the nonviolence movement, how many stood up for equity and stood up for humanity and love and compassion, and in a way that the consciousness of America overall wasn't necessarily receptive to yet, but it created a great shift, as we know.
Yes.
And so learning that made me value what I had in the present so much more, to where I became a top student at that school, end up being on a plaque, the top ninth grade. By the time I graduated, that was when ninth grade was the end of middle school, and then you went to high school in 10th grade. But I got motivated. I remember hearing a speech from Abraham Lincoln, who said, "We trample on the blood of those who have died in sacrifice for our freedoms and our rights, etc., when we don't X, Y, and Z." Well, I connected the dots and looked at education and those who were fighting for equality in education and opportunities, and realized I had been really not honoring the sacrifices they made. And I was in my mom busted her tail to put me in a great private school. And I had, pretty much neglected that. So that change, I ended up with excellent grades, top student, and I walked myself into the superintendent of that private school I had gotten kicked out, or my mom took me out of, whichever one. But I walked myself into the superintendent's office on my own initiative, because this was my plan. I showed him my grades. I told him what I had accomplished, and I said I told him about the change, and I said I want to come back. And I ended up getting a scholarship back, and ended up graduating as MVP of the wrestling team, class president, getting nominated to West Point. It's a beautiful story. But I say all that because it sounds good on the books. The reality was, all that time I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was doing the best I could, but I knew I was still disconnected through that whole time. I was just doing the best I could, but I didn't I remember just feeling like I don't really know what I'm doing that whole time. Like everything I was doing, I'm just doing my best. I don't know what I'm doing. That's just how I felt, right? Most of my life. Even that's
the thing. But there's something to be said for that. This space where we're doing something that either feels right, not just the sort of instant gratification feel right, and if that's it, so be it. But something, it feels right in a way where you feel like you're getting a nudge. You may not know that the nudge is coming from within, but it just feels like this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do, especially if you're living in the moment. If you're living in the moment, you don't always know what's going to happen. If you're an artist, a creator, you're creating it in the moment. You're not going to say, well, last time I drew this, it didn't come out right. You're not in the moment. Yeah. So I get that.
And you learn these beautiful lessons. But getting back to the question you asked me about the African-American plight. So all that time I'm there, I'm an African-American back in this predominantly white school, and I did not feel the sense of separation, even though I knew the history. I didn't consider myself any way separate from anybody, period.
Is that because how you grew up?
I think it's because of how my mom believed in accepting the ideas from her, how I grew up, the environment you went to. Religion I learned from, all of that conditioning. I felt even though I was for 2 years in an all African-American school, I still didn't feel like I was separate from anybody. And, I'm learning how to fit in like any kid, and, join the wrestling team and, learn how to fight and all this stuff. Had won some, lost some, but back then in that school, I had to gain respect, right? And I got respect. Put some respect on it, right? but
put some respect on my name.
right. It was that journey of learning, even in that environment, how to navigate and fit in. It was such a blessing to me because I was able to identify and understand those who look like me more, because I'd been in such a different environment for so long. Those who are on a lower socioeconomic status than even I was, but more importantly, the consciousness of that community. Yeah. And so what I began to notice was that just like in my life, how I had a lot of victimization consciousness and how I looked at things were that way. What I began to notice as I got older, I began to see those in myself, and then I was able to see it and understand it, that same consciousness at large. but I could see the perfection in it. So I want to give an example that will make sense of this before I get into that. A good example is, recently, Kathy and I just had a conversation the other day, and we were talking about communication. And one of the things I've been learning is not to take personal if she's not, if I'm coming on too strong or talking about something that needs a break, right? She let me know that she need to eat something, want to discuss something later. And I was like, all right. And I took it kind of personal, was walking away, and I sat down and I was like, I need to align because I was feeling that energy, right? Let me align. And then as I aligned and listened to the knowing told me, look at you. You have progressed so much. You have grown in this and can be compassionate and respectful when she says that. Whereas in the past, I would charge forward and be like, no, this is important. I need you to understand, and not be sensitive to someone's needs when they have had enough, right? So that shift helped me see the perfection in what happened versus the lower level of consciousness that was trying to look at it and make myself a victim. That's a perfect example of what I was seeing in my own life throughout the journey and what I was seeing in my community at large, in the African-American community. And instead of being able to see the perfection in it from a higher level of consciousness of what we've gone through as a people and as a culture, sometimes we succumb to the victimization consciousness, and that creates more suffering. But it's perfect. It's not a bad thing, and it doesn't need to be fixed. We just need to recognize it and decide how we want to choose. We're not here to save anybody from choosing suffering. We're not here to, like Jesus or Yeshua, whatever you want to call him, basically was quoted as saying, get the speck out your own eye. Don't worry about what they're doing. You look at you. What are you doing? So are we choosing suffering, victimization, consciousness, and separation, resistance, or are we aligning? Are we expanding into that oneness and that knowing? And as we do that, we begin to see the circumstances differently. We see the perfection and the value of everything that has happened in our stories, in our ancestry, all of it. We see how it's all working for the good. Yeah. But that's our choice. And we can share it for those who are open. For those who are not, great. They're doing what they need to do. It's their journey. They got sovereignty just like you. It's not for me to judge what he's choosing. You know what I'm saying? It's for me to decide, am I enjoying the quality of the experience I am creating right now or not? If I'm not, do I want to do something about it?
That's right.
And what practices do I know that assist? Use what works. If I don't know, find what works and use it. And we're learning more and more. And so remembering that is what I've been dedicating myself to, remembering to align, to listen to the knowing, that grace that's always present. And that has radically changed how I look at the plight of the African American and the plight of this country. Yes, we have all succumbed to this belief in separation, and we have all acted out in these lower levels of consciousness, threat, victim, accuser, accused, predator, prey. We've played out all these different roles, and they have taught us what it feels like to invest in this separate consciousness, this illusion of separation, this disregard for life, this disregard for love and compassion, this hoarding mentality of only for my family, only for my people. I'm only going to have love and compassion for my cousins, or whoever, right? It's like all this lower level consciousness that creates so much suffering and fear and attack and threat and harm and all this stuff is like, okay, it's perfect, but it don't feel great. It's like, so eventually we wake up. So now my view is so different. I feel as if all culture are going through its cycles, the U.S. culture, the U.S. consciousness, whatever you want to call it, going through these wonderful cycles and journeys we've created that are actually perfect opportunities to awaken to who we truly are. And those who choose it begin to transcend the suffering.
It's not that the cycles disappear. It's just we transcend the need to believe that all is not well, the need to believe that there is something that needs to be fixed, the need to believe that this separation is real, the need to believe that there's some sort of threat. And that low level of anxiety that is always there when we believe that subconsciously begins to go away when we align and let it go. It begins to just dissipate. We let that source energy begin to flow more because we remove these blocks, these traumas. I mean, if you think about believing in the nature of this life being so real and the things that we get taught and conditioned to believe, how we limit God as some separate thing from us, right? That we got to chase and find, when in reality, we're one with it. You know what I'm saying? And all we got to do is find a way to align with it and then know it. Know that it's already here. Technically, we already know. Yeah. It's just we've chosen to believe in forgetting. We have chosen to believe in it to experience and create the illusion of suffering. And as soon as we're ready, we can give it up. Just got to remember how. So as far as the flight of race and all of that, I feel like it's just a bigger example of what happens in here and what's going on in here. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, we're not separate from it. Yeah. It's part of us. It's our consciousness.
We're co-creating it.
Projected externally, but it's really in us. Yeah. And so it's for each of us to take that journey and begin to figure out how to access a higher level of consciousness that knows what it is. Like, what's our lesson in this? Who are we to be in this? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that's the thing about this spiritual understanding, spiritual awareness, that we must be willing to not just know intellectually, I'm a light being, I'm a light worker, but to be able to demonstrate it, to embody it, to live it. So when I am having an experience where I'm treating a loved one, someone I say I love or care about, and I'm treating them separate from me, judging them, criticizing them, blaming them for my own pain, are we willing to do the work? You talked about struggle earlier, and I think this sometimes we create struggle because we think that, however you see struggle, I know you see it differently, but we create it because when it's happening, we feel like this shouldn't be happening. I'm not supposed to be having this pain. Yeah. If I wasn't traumatized when I was younger, then I'll be a different person. That is BS. It doesn't matter. You've been traumatized. Deal the flip with it. I say it like that, not that I'm not compassionate, but the truth is you have been traumatized. You know it. Now what? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? This morning, I had an experience. For me, it's like doing my spiritual practice and how I've been showing up in romantic relationships, that it was so close that I'm like, yeah, I've healed that. Yeah, I've forgiven that. It was like I started to see that I was carrying stuff into earlier today. And I had to really dig deep. So when I went for my walk, I was doing some forgiveness work. I actually, it's part of the book that I'm writing, and I had this app that I can speak into. So I was literally writing my book and speaking my process of how I have looked at women, how I've looked at my relationship, and how I looked for acceptance through romantic relationship, how I looked for acceptance from women I was looking for in women in romantic relationship what I was looking for in my mom, like the connection that I didn't think I had with her. Right. I felt like mom was always criticizing. My mom was always nagging. And somehow it's like when we are experiencing separation, when I feel like, oh, my mom is always nagging, my mom doesn't appreciate me, there is a part of me that's saying there is more. There's a part of life that's saying, no, you need to look at the flip side. And based on our consciousness, our understanding, our awareness, we may seek that balance through other people. Yeah. Or we know to go inside.
Yes,
and say, okay. And that inner work is a messy work. It's a messy work. It's messy. It is messy. You know, and I say that, yes, until you deal with your mess, you can't be the messenger. You're just the postman, a mailman, because a mailman doesn't care about what they're delivering to you. They're just delivering it. where there's a foreclosure, a relationship coming to an end, a divorce letter, whatever it is, they just deliver it. But if you want to be a messenger, you have to sit with the mess.
Yeah.
And be able to make space and peace. Maybe not even peace. You just like really deal with it. And today I was like, oh my God. And I start going back and I'm like, this is a lot. Now, the beauty of it is it didn't take me out because I was ready. I had another experience where Spirit was nudging me about opening my heart even more. I'm like, if I open my heart any wider, I won't be able to move because I'm going to get stuck. It's like, come on, how deep can I go? But what I realized today is like, it is about opening my heart, but to really look and confront myself. So the spiritual practice, I keep doing this because it's trying to fall off. The spiritual practice and the spiritual work is individual. Sometimes we can have other people support us on the journey, but we must be willing to break open.
Yeah.
And until we do that, we can't embrace what Lopez said in the chat room. He said something, the divine paradox, I think he called it. He said, I call it the divine paradox. He's not referring to what I'm saying, I don't think. But that's what comes up. There's a paradox where within us, we become that God that sees the darkness and the light. And it's neutral, or we call it good. We see it for what it is, as is all part of our expansion, and not just my expansion, not just healing my relationship with the past and how I showed up in romantic relationships, but for the rest of humanity.
Yes, that's it. Man. One other thing, man. When it comes to compassion for ourselves, when we're going through that journey of the mess, cleaning up the mess or looking at the mess, a lot of times that lower level of consciousness, what I hear as limited conditioned thinking. In other words, the programming, the conditioning that limits us, the thinking that limits us. It's not that we're limited. We are limitless, but our thinking limits us through conditioning.
Yes.
We are learning how to see that and recognize it in our lives when we're aligning. We start to see the judgment of the mess and how we judge ourselves for the messes we've made and how we judge our families for the messes we've created in our cultures, in our nations, in our world. In all these ways, we begin to look at the quote mess, but even emotionally in our own beings, when we start to expand through this alignment, we begin to discover all these subconscious things that we are connected to. It is our consciousness. There is nothing we're separate from in this world. Even things we think are most wicked and evil, genocide, all this, terrorism, this, that, and the other. It's our consciousness. So when we're going within, we begin to expand ourselves and start noticing some of these quote messes. And what we're doing is either staying in lower levels of consciousness that don't recognize how to integrate, and instead they judge and separate and reconfirm the suffering or the illusion of separation. So we just amplify it. So we can begin to expand and choose. Just because you're expanding your awareness doesn't mean you're necessarily choosing to align and take it higher. You can still choose at any time to create more suffering. It's up to you. And neither choice is right or wrong, more noble than the other. It's just, how does it feel when you begin to look at these things, when you begin to see the mess? What is the quality of the experience you are creating in this now moment as you begin to look? And if you notice that you are not enjoying the experience of the mess, not enjoying the experience of discovering the darkness, not enjoying the experience of looking upon these things that you would rather not see, that's your cue to align. You are slipping out of that alignment so that you can expand further and integrate and see the perfection in all that is, so you can know all is well and always is in your being now, in this moment, as you're looking at this stuff. So you can see with the eyes of love that keeps no records of wrongs. You can see with the eyes of spirit that knows all of this is for us. and you can stop believing in the illusion and its power to threaten anything that you are. So the reality is you are no thing, in you're the essence of it all, the eternal oneness, right? As we're doing that, to me, the reminder as of late has really, it's always the same core message for me in my life, lesson-wise, and that is, in this now moment, am I aware of how I'm feeling, what I'm choosing, the quality of my now experience? Am I present with it? And am I choosing alignment? No matter what I'm doing, talking to you now, moving on to the next, grabbing my tea, taking a sip, swallowing, whatever I'm doing, am I present with the quality of my experience and choosing alignment so that I can be in this accepting space, non-resistant, non-judgmental, expanded space that feels like bliss, dynamic bliss, in other words, changing bliss. It's not the same bliss every moment, but it's just flowing in everything that arises. As I accept it, I get to experience what this feels like, but the quality of the experience is no longer suffering or resistance or judgment. It's a flow. It's a beauty to it. It's a trust to it. And no longer am I in this fear and separation, because I am aligned with the trust and the flow and the knowing that all is well. That experience of that practice brings trust. I don't have to fear anymore. I'm set free from the fear, set free from the threat. Now, that's the experience that if we find the practices that work, shift the quality of this now for us each. And we all have access to do that no matter what is arising. And that to me is the reminder every time. Now, how we see what we're creating, that is the opposite of that, are the lessons. That's often the lessons. Actually, there's two sides of the lessons. How does it feel when we're doing something opposite to that? And how we're choosing to do that is one form of the lesson. The other side of the lesson is, how does it feel to let that go? And get back in alignment and back in the knowing, so we can be more compassionate, so we can see with the eyes of perfection and love, and appreciation, gratitude, and all of that. All that beauty that life has for us, even in the midst of what looks like mess and chaos, is there. It's all there, right?
It's all there.
Line, right?
It's aligning, because for those of you just joining us, you listen to Being You, the podcast. My guest is John Stringer. You can find out more about him by going to his website, John Stringer Inc., John Stringer, INC.com. String, he plays the guitar, okay? He used to be Stronger, but he evolved. Now he's Stringer. So check him out. But the other thing as well is this whole thing about judgment. It's right, if we replace judgment with seeing rightly, because there are those of us that pay to experience mess. We pay to experience mess by paying to be a member of a gym or going to a gym, because pushing those weights and doing all the exercise is pretty messy and painful. And there's resistance, which is what builds the muscles. So if we start looking at the mess that we're going through in life, the challenges, the things that's happening in the world, whether you think is going on inside of you or not, you think, no, that's not inside of me. We're one, but that ain't one of it. That's not one with me. If we start looking at that and say, okay, what am I feeling? This is growing my spiritual muscles. Yeah. But we sometimes are too quick. I know I am too quick to judge my experience. And when I judge my experience so harsh. Boy, I'm so glad I have a spiritual practice, because I would not be doing this. Because when I get on myself, I beat my own ass. I be like, stop, okay, I'm meditating. Okay, right. Okay, there's only one. But the more we start being our own self up and begin to broaden how we see the painful experiences, challenges, challenging experience, the pandemic, people dying, all of that, to say, how would God see this? How would the divine see this? Yes. What is for me to see here? What is the lesson here? We start to, we become our own fitness coach and saying, give me 2 more. Okay, one more. How can I see this differently? The coach pushes your hands up to help you.
Yes.
And we just have to keep going to the gym. We have to keep going to the spiritual gym.
You can think of it in so many contexts. What you said is so perfect, a reminder, because if you look at, there's so many examples we receive. You look at Yeshua, Jesus, what I grew up studying. He's in a time where people were being suppressed. The Jews were being suppressed. They were hoping for a savior to rebel and take back their land. This brother comes talking about me and God are one. Don't you know that you are gods? It says it in your scripture. So why you getting mad at me?
What?
Yeah, why you getting mad at me talking about I'm the son of God? And they're like, wait a minute, I thought you was coming to free the you talking some blasphemy, bro.
No, you talking some shit. That's talking Corey Day. You talking some shit about one with God. Don't you see what's going on in the world?
It's like I'm the one, y'all. I'm the one. You can't get through God except through me. He's like, what? This brother right here he done lost his mind.
He's high. And he's like, yes, I am.
The irony was what he was teaching to his people were metanoia, changing the mind or being reborn, born again. He was talking about consciousness and the oneness of consciousness, not the physical separation. Because literally, if you're looking at the physical world, oneness makes no freaking sense. You and I aren't one if we're our bodies. That's stupid. It just doesn't compute. But he talked about don't be deceived by the things of the world. You're in this world of form, but not of it. So don't be deceived by that. Go within. Listen to the spirit that teaches all things. Align with the divine I am consciousness. I am that I am. When you align with that, that is oneness. That consciousness is the Christ consciousness, the anointing that many of us have been seeking and that our souls yearn for. It's no accident that pretty much all religions are pointing to something within, some great power that is not physical, but has control over the physical. But more importantly, showing all these paths and ways to access it. The reality is we have to find what works for us so that we can experience and know. To the Jews who believed him, Jesus said, hold to my teachings, then you'll know the truth. Great, you believe. I love bringing that up, right? John 3:16, everybody talk about believe. Just 5 chapters later in John 8, he's talking to the Jews that believe and tell them, guess what? That's great.
You're just biased, man. You're just biased.
First step accomplished.
You're biased.
Now, if you want to be set free, you got to know, right? Yeah. Anyway, getting to the point. As we begin to be present and learn those practices that help us align, aka centered, aka be here now, aka being present, whatever you want to call it, we expand into that more subtle energy within us. And we recognize that that subtle energy is everything. It is the essence of all life, and it is in us. And then we can begin to choose to navigate it differently. But here's the thing. How do we choose? Are we choosing the limited conditioned thinking from society, from how we grew up, from the experience and the memories and the traumas we've created and the conclusions or misperceptions we've created? Or are we accessing this knowing that sees the perfection in it all and knows how to navigate it from a place of power, from a place of oneness, and from a place of perfection? That is how we know and are set free. If we choose that, we're winning.
We're winning.
We're winning if we don't choose it too. We're
already won. We're one. We have one WON and we are one ONE. So either way,
we have one because we are one.
That's right. Now, John, there's so many things I want to still talk about. I know you gotta go. We went way over. I'm like, when John and I get together, man, time just dissolves.
This is like the short version.
Right? If you're available, we can talk about that. If you're available next week, I want to bring you back for part 2 if you're available. Hopefully you are. But I just want to read some of the comments I see here. We have Kubalu here from South Africa.
What's up, brother?
Yes, he said, greetings and divine blessings. Loving this conversation. May your light continue to shine brightly. Love and light, Cabello. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. From Johannesburg, South Africa. And Kamau, who is in, what is it?
Cali.
Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas.
Right. Oh, you're right. Yeah. Vegas. What's up, bro?
He said, my brothers, my friend, thank you for this dialogue. Better than my morning banana. My heart, soul, and body are screaming, yes! Right. He's having a spiritual orgasm. You can't lose with the stuff we use. That's my brother. So, yeah, we'll see if we can continue. If not next week, maybe the week after. I would really like to bring you back next week. Hopefully you're available. Because and we're coming into Father's Day. And, you know, you have such a beautiful relationship with your son and the things that you do and how you communicate with him. And I think it's important to be able to share that, to see an example that there's another way.
Definitely.
John, I think this will be a great conversation. Thank you.
Always, man. Love you, man. My soulmate homie in the UK.
That's right.
Next time, bro.
I love you, my brother. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Talk to you.
Oops, sorry about that. Took you off too quick. Woo wee. Yeah. Come on, stop it. I have not written that out loud. I guess I'm not as evolved as I thought I was. I thought I was the one. Only if you're online on Facebook would you see that. But I'm not saying that out loud. I don't know why, though. I have to check that. What's that about? I happily say spiritual orgasm, and you get multiple orgasms. But then I can't say what Kamal was saying in the chat room. That starts with an E, and it ends with another E. Okay, stop. I can't. Yeah, I'm going to punk out on this one. Oh, my God. I feel rejuvenated. And I'm so grateful for you all listening. Kamaru, Lopez, Cabello, Quali. There's a lot of K's in the house. Christine, Tina was here. Dora's here. Deborah's here. Scroll up. Kathy, John's wife, is here. So hopefully Mariam was here. Hopefully John can join us next week and we'll continue this conversation because I just love to watch and see and hear how John relates to his son, who is John as well. Johnny now is, I think, 10 or no, maybe 9, something like that. But I think it's good to see the example of a father healing the trauma of the past that sometimes seep through in parenting, because that's what we learned, that's what we saw, and the courage, the willingness and compassion to want to do something different, which requires to be authentic and vulnerable with your son, with your daughter. So anyway, if it's not next week, the week after that, I think that's the first week in June. So Rev D will be with us. But anyway, you'll find out. What can I say? Kathy said John 9.0. That's right. India, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you, listeners. I love these conversations. Oh yeah, Kathy wants me to remind you. Kathy and John, they're business partners, and Kathy has mastered this thing about marketing. She does it so well, and then she said, "I just love how you do it, Kathy. You make me smile." She said, "Hear more from John and wife Kathy on the Awaken Pillow Talk podcast." That's right. All that information is on John's website. It is John Stringer Inc. JohnStringerInc.com. JohnStringerInc.com. I got 2 mice here. I don't know. Yeah, you know what I mean. Because I got 2 monitors. And I want to give you John's handle. Again, he's on Instagram, scrolling up. On Twitter, he's John Stringer. On Facebook is facebook.com, John Stringer 1111. the number 1111, 1111. There you go. On YouTube, youtube.com/user/John H. Stringer. And on Instagram, it is john.h.stringer. I love and appreciate you. Life is good when we get to share moments like this. I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you. And I thank God for you. And continue to make a difference. Wherever you are, embrace it. If you can't embrace it, trust it. If you can't trust it, trust the power of God in you. And if you can't do that, hold on to this spiritual concept, this truth that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. It will pass. It will move on. And something else is around the corner. And it's really for your growth and transformation. You can't fight life. Life's got you. Trust it. It's not a problem to solve. Peace and blessings. I'll see you next week. I'm out.
There's a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love. Welcome to peace. Welcome to our community.